Hello everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Sam Labat, and I'm a painter. Like I used to do kind of a bit of graffiti back in the day, but I've kind of moved more towards doing murals and working in the studio. So I just want to start with this quote by Stefan Sagmeister because I think it sums up the last several years. Because the last several years there was a lot of experimentation and a lot of trying stuff out and not really having any kind of sense of cohesion. And it was quite frustrating, but like looking back on it, I tried so much stuff, I learned a lot from it. And it's only recently I've realised that it's kind of fed back into what I'm doing now, and that was like a beneficial time. So, like he says, like it's much better to wind up with a lot of crap having tried it than to overthink in the beginning and not do it. So, this is the latest piece I painted. It was last weekend. It's down in Clare, but I want to go back to 2007. And like show you how it progressed to that stage. Because this painting, this is the kind of stuff I was doing before I was painting graffiti, and I was 15 or 16, and this painting, it's important because it was the very first time I ever bought a can of spray paint. And the gun, the magenta colour is actually spray paint, but I went to the town and bought one can of spray paint, came home, sprayed it into a cup and painted it with a paintbrush. And it's like really embarrassing because it's like so unbelievably not street, you know, it's not like zero street cred, like, and it's on a canvas as well. But that was the kind of stuff I was doing. So I think a lot of people, they start painting graffiti when they're in their teens and they move to maybe doing canvases, but I was kind of the opposite, like. So that was that one. And then this is some of the other stuff I was doing. Like this is a year or two later, it's a self-portrait, it's kind of embarrassing now, but like, it was like absolutely hated school, like, and so I think this kind of sums it up. Like, that's an oil painting that with brushes, and then this is another one that was probably around that time, and it's a canvas, but you can see the background is all made up with spray paint, and then on top of it, it's ink, and I think there's some acrylic paint and stuff. So, this is where I was coming from. I wasn't looking at a lot of graffiti. I think I came in kind of at a slight angle, like it wasn't like a conventional approach to graffiti. So yeah, and this is so when I over those years while I was painting those canvases, I kind of started getting into graffiti, but I didn't know anyone who painted graffiti. Like I didn't know the whole kind of unofficial, the kind of rule book, or like what to do or like how to go about it, like. So I was just out on my own doing my own thing, and to be honest, it's unbelievably bad. Like the standard drops very, very quickly when you start painting graffiti, but this is the kind of stuff I was doing, and like the painters I would have been into were like the old masters and like the impressionists and stuff, and like it kind of, you know, it's why it's all kind of figurative, and like it was like even the thing at the top left is a wheat paste. It's not a painting. It was very kind of like open to everything, or just trying out a lot of things, like. So then, pretty much, it was time for college, and I was discouraged to go to art college by my parents because I think like if you want to go to art college, like I was pretty adamant. I was like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna study painting, and my parents were like, that's an absolutely ridiculous idea. Like you should try to get a proper job. Like, so and then at the same time, I was kind of like an angsty kind of like fuck the system kind of teenager, because I was like, if I go to art college, I'm not doing graphic design. I'm not gonna end up doing advertisements for Coca-Cola or something. I was like, I'm not doing that, like I'm just gonna paint, like. So as a result, I ended up doing architecture, and I really didn't have any interest in it, and like to be honest, I couldn't stand it for the first pretty much the entire course. But I was in there, and it was kind of like a early life crisis. I was like, Jesus, if I stick with this, I'm gonna end up having a career in architecture, and like, you know, I'm gonna, like, I really don't want to do that. So I was like, I need to take painting a bit more seriously. So this is one of the pieces I painted. It was like one of the first kind of outside pieces I put a bit of effort into, and back at the time I thought it was good, but look at it now, it's a bit ropey. But again, like the influences, I was really into the McLean crew, who were a German photorealist crew, and like Haircut. I got a book called Graffiti World, and I had a list of 100 artists in it from all over the world, and there was such like a cacophony of styles in that book. Like it was just really a very broad overview, and what I liked was the kind of like realistic looking stuff. So there's that piece, there's this piece down around the corner from the Bernard Shaw, and this is very kind of like inspired by haircut, like the kind of mix of kind of illustrative line drawing and kind of like realism, and this piece is also kind of important because it's the very first time I put my actual name on a piece, because until then I didn't really show it, but I was doing like a lot of like really bad graffiti, like really like just tags and just really kind of like the generic stuff, and it was like quite dejecting doing that stuff. And at the same time, I didn't want to have like an identity crisis. I didn't want to put so much work and effort into something and have like a fake alias for it. I was like, if I'm gonna do it, I'll do it well. I'm just gonna stick my name in it. So that was the very first time I put my name on a piece. And then same time, there's this piece painted up Three Rock Mountain, and again, it's kind of based on realism, but it's a bit more stylized. And yeah, like there's a close up, like. It's the only photo I had. I was going through. I didn't have any other detail shots, like. Like I think with all this stuff, it's like it's based on like trying to mimic a photograph, and I think that's quite like symptomatic of being young, because you think good art is something that you can understand, like something that other people can kind of like appreciate. Like when you're showing your mates and stuff, they're like, oh, that's cool, like. But I think as I've kind of grown up and like taught a lot more about painting, I don't think any of this stuff is very good, like, to be honest. But then yeah, so after first year of college and like a year of just hell trying to design buildings, I decided to take a year off, and I was 100% convinced myself. It's like there's no way I'm going back to college. Like there's no way I'm going back to study architecture, and I was really unsure what I wanted to do. I was kind of thinking, like I was very, very close to just going and studying graphic design, because I thought I'd be more able for it, like I'd be better suited to it. But at this time, like I got a job part-time in a spar shop, so I was making a bit of money, and I could actually afford to buy paint, because all the pieces previous, like they're such a struggle to paint. Like I'd save up like 20 quid and you buy 5 cans, then you have to go and you paint a bit and you'd run out of paint and you do it again. So like those kind of realistic pieces I showed, they take ages, just because you just don't have the kind of the facility to actually be able to go at it properly. But yeah, this piece, so this is on the year out, and I think it's when I kind of started thinking about painting a bit more. I was kind of thinking, like, there's no just copying a photograph. It's pretty boring, like, and they're pretty unenjoyable to paint. So this is quite stylized. Do you see the kind of like the skulls, instead of being kind of rendered with like soft fades, it's kind of sketchy, kind of like as if they're drawn, and then there's that kind of overlay, kind of from Photoshop. I wasn't actually using Photoshop at the time. I think it was just a trendy thing to do. So, and then, yeah, like the tongue. I don't really know why I painted this stuff. Like you see the tongue kind of hanging over that bone, but like the tongue, like I think that was meant to be a piercing in the tongue, but it's just a block of silver from the background. So it's kind of a very kind of, I suppose, a graphic kind of thought behind it, like. And then, yeah, I think that was funny. Kind of Picasso heads were just something I was drawing. It was just, I think at the time there was just so many influences. I was kind of drowning in influence, because I was, like I was saying, I was very close to studying graphic design, and I actually started doing a course in web design. I was reading books about it, and at the same time, I think just even being in college, architecture kind of infiltrated my brain. It's just, yeah, I just wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. This kind of brings me back to the year out. Like, and this is a portrait of a kleptomaniac by Theodore Géricault. He's one of my favorite painters. He's old enough, from like the 18th century, is it 19th century? But I did a drawing of it a couple of years previous, and then I decided to paint it. So it was like very experimental. Like, it was just kind of like, there was no cohesion at this point. Like I was just like, I wonder what happens if I try and do this. So this is the result, like, and it was like based on a dude who'd been dead for 200 years, and I was very like, I think a lot of people might have been influenced by like graffiti crews or like the current artists, but like I still had quite a broad range of interests. So like this is the kind of stuff that I was still kind of thinking about and looking at, like, and then this piece is unbelievably bad. Like it's exceptionally bad. But the funny thing is, this piece is at the opposite end of the warehouse. This was at one end, and this was at the other end, and I would paint it maybe a week or two later. So that kind of shows you how all over the place I was, like. And it was just trying stuff out, like, because I wanted to use house paints. I wanted to try to see what the possibilities were. So this piece is spray paint and like emulsion paint, house paint. And like it's crap, but like in the details you see like nice stuff starts to happen, like the combination of the two. And there was I painted a lot of pieces like this in this style, and I was just really exploring and trying to figure out what I was doing. Because like having a style in the whole street art kind of graffiti thing is like, you know, it's what you're meant to do. But I kind of realized I needed a reason to have a style. Like I didn't really want to pick something up and just do it for the sake of doing it. And I think this kind of goes back to the Sagmeister quote. It's kind of like, just end up, like just try stuff and just learn from it. And I wrote this at the bottom of the piece and it was like, fail again, try again, because like the piece is shit, but like, you know, is if you keep on trying, I think something will come of it. And then this is Frank Ryan's pub in Smithfield. And it's pretty much Ty, who's the owner of Frank Ryan's, ran into me one day. I was painting like a shop shutter or something, and he goes, "Will you paint the smoking area in my pub?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." I was like super excited. Like I was still pretty young. Like I didn't really have any experience doing any kind of like jobs or anything. And he didn't even ask to look at a portfolio, so he didn't know what he was getting himself in for. I went down and saw the spot, and I was so excited because like I had the opportunity to, you know, like try to do something cool. And I pretty much said to him, I was like, "Man, if you pay for the paint and let me do whatever I want, like I'm happy to go with that." And he was like, "All right, cool. Gladly do whatever you want." And he ended up getting this. I don't think he was too happy. And it turns out, right, so you see it, the pieces on the left, and then there's a gate, and then there's the pub. And I was kind of painting it, and he was like, "You're gonna have to paint over that." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, I don't own that wall." And the inside that building is like some government child service or something, and like a crash. And there, he's like, they might think it's a bit spooky for the kids and all, like, but Tyke is a bit mad, so he kind of left it up, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll deal with it." Like, but yeah, so I arrived with like a ton of paint and like the biggest ladder I could find. So that's like, I think it's nearly 7 meters tall. And then Tyke was like, "Oh, would you paint the gate?" Like, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not painting the gate." He was like, because that's probably what he wanted done, just to clean up the area. But like the piece in the bottom right is by a very well-known New Zealand artist called Askew, and he painted that when he was in Ireland in 2004. So I was like, "Oh, I can't touch that." Like, so I painted the side of like the child service building and a bit of his pub, and didn't paint the part he wanted painted. But yeah, it was like super exciting painting it. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. And then yeah, so pretty much during that year out of college, I kind of came to the conclusion that like ideally I just want to paint. I just want to paint like paint walls and paint murals, and I really would prefer not to be in college, but like it's good to have a degree. So the quickest way out was to just finish the degree I had started in architecture, and it was absolute torture. But I think this is like towards the end of the second year, and it was painted at the Old City Graffiti Jam. And it's very kind of experimental, like it's a dog lying down. It's quite abstract, but like you see the face and the kind of pose are kind of rendered in kind of like a realistic, well, I wouldn't say that realistic, but kind of rendered in a style similar to the kind of photorealist pieces I showed you at first, and then the body is quite painterly, kind of like that dodgy piece in the warehouse. So you see like stuff starting to come together, and then if you look close, you can see little kind of the little black marks like up in his back is very kind of like a Photoshop-esque kind of stroke. So it was at this time in college when I started learning. Wouldn't say learn because I didn't teach anything, but when you start learning Photoshop and some computer programs. So it's definitely, I was happy with this piece, but it was still a bit all over the place. Like, but like stuff was starting to come together, and that was another one because I was pretty excited after painting the dogs. That was like a couple of days later, and the hand is rendered in the kind of same tonal range as the dog's face. In the background, you can see the scribbles is all Photoshop like, and then it's painted on the wall. So I was kind of it's kind of like developing an interest in just using the computer to aid painting. But then at the same time, there's like a lot of just painting pretty like standard graffiti, because it's just on the weekend, like you literally just meet up at Hull City and buy paint and just go and paint graffiti, and it's enjoyable, and it's a nice thing to do, to be honest. Like you can go out on a Sunday morning and just paint pieces. But like none of the stuff is too serious, you know. Like this wasn't proper painting for me. Like the pieces I showed you previous, there was like thought behind them, and there's kind of like experimentation. Like this stuff is pretty just straightforward. Like there's nothing too interesting to it, but like that's what filled up a lot of time as well. Like, and then in college, like there's like doing architecture is one of those courses that you have to work so hard just to pass. And there was just such little time for painting. And I remember like one Friday evening was like I really want to paint a piece, like and just like it was more intuitive to actually do the piece up on the computer than to actually sketch it on paper. So I started doing these kind of pieces, and like that's straight from the computer onto the wall, like just three colors. And then it's just stuff like this. There was a lot of just pretty easy to paint pieces going around at the moment. So then I think everything up to this point has been pretty much like an experiment. Like it's pretty all over the shop, like. And it goes back to that Sagmeister thing of just try stuff and just learn from it, like. And I think that's really important if you're doing something creative, like even like if it's in design or art, like, because you learn a lot from all the pieces that fail or go miserably wrong. And to be honest, I felt like everything I'd ever done was crap, like. So this is pretty much a summer after just finishing college, and I was pretty much like, I'm just gonna really focus on painting. I have time now. I just want to try, you know, make a good go of it. Like I don't really have any obstacles in the way. So, believe it or not, this is actually a dog skull. It's a collage I made. You see the line drawing in the center is of a dog skull, and then there's like an ink drawing as well that's torn up, and it's of very stylized, but it's of a dog skull as well. So I kind of just drew it 3 times in different kind of styles, tore it up, and then I brought it into the computer and edited it in the computer, and then painted the result. So, to be honest, like even though like I kind of say it's a dog skull, it's pretty much just an abstract composition. And I think painting abstract pieces is actually quite scary, because when you're doing something that's literal, it's very easy to get, and like people can understand it. So I think if you like move over to doing something abstract, it can kind of be kind of scary and intimidating, because you know, like a lot of people just look at it and go, oh, I like the yellow background, and just walk away. But like not many people will look at it or try to figure out what's going on, or maybe appreciate the shapes or the colors or the kind of the textures in it. So that was the first one, and I was quite happy with it. And then I went on and I did a hand. So that's a hand, and it's this kind of same process again. It was like a torn up photo, and then a very stylized ink drawing of a hand, and then some patterns which I found in, they had these textile pattern books in the library, in the architecture library from the 80s, and there was 3 of them, and I was almost certainly the only person that ever looked at them, and I loved them. And so there was a lot of patterns in the stuff at this time, and they all come from those books, but that was the hand, and then that was it painted, and you can kind of see between that the kind of initial collage and the color, and there's kind of like masks over it and cut through and all, so it ended up being kind of like essentially a computer graphic kind of painted on the wall, like, and it's very stylized and it's very abstract, like you'd really struggle to see too much of the hand in it, but I found doing this stuff a lot more interesting. It was kind of it was a lot more engaging, and yeah, I think it was like an important departure from doing stuff that was literal. And then the last one is a shoe, so that was actually a shoe, believe it or not. Like, and you can kind of see up at the top, you can kind of see a photograph of some laces on the sole, and then some more of those fashion patterns, and then an ink drawing of a shoe, like very, 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 very stylized. And then this is what I pretty much painted, and like I was really happy with the other 2 and this, and I was really pissed off. Like, it just looked crap. Like, I don't think there was like enough like tonal range. I didn't really like the colors, didn't like anything about it, so I photographed it and brought it home, and then pretty much scribbled over it on Photoshop, and went back and painted that layer on top of it. Like, and I think it was at this point because something kind of clicked, and I was like, I think the computer offers potential to influence painting in ways that you wouldn't just by your hands, because like this just doesn't work visually at all. Like, I just don't like it. It's just kind of floating in the background. But like this, I think this kind of solidifies the whole image, and not in a million years did you painted that standing in front of the wall. Like, so it became kind of interesting thinking that like you can like kind of solve problems or like create images on the computer that like you wouldn't be doing without it. So yeah, I was quite happy with this piece at that point, and then afterwards I kind of took it a step further, and this piece is down near the Halfpenny Bridge, and it's an absolute nightmare to paint. Because there's a massive, you can kind of see it in the photo, there's a massive gate at the right hand side, and it's kind of pushed back into that wall, and it's just the whole proportions of it. Like, if you try to do anything on it, that gate just takes a chunk out of it, and it's horrible. So pretty much the kind of, I was trying to think of something to paint in it for ages, and then I just took like a square from one of the pieces I've been working on and just pasted it into the gate, and then just copy and pasted it. I think it's 8 times, so it fills a different kind of extrusions. You see the pillar on the right, it's the same image just pulled up. And then the main section is the same image, and then the top there's just a copy paste of the same image. But again, it was that kind of thing of like using the computer and just seeing what that would offer, that like working at the wall or just working with a pen and paper wouldn't. Because on the computer it takes 5 seconds to do that, like, and then it takes fucking ages to paint. But yeah, I think this piece is obviously a lot more kind of conceptual than the previous ones, but yeah, I think it's recent enough, 2014. And there are some shots. I just like the photos of it because it does kind of look like the dude's in a glitch or something, like. But I don't think, yeah. Yeah, so then I finally finished college. I actually had to go back and repeat a semester because I failed miserably in second year. So finally in like January 2015, I was free. And this is my studio, and this is actually true. Like, this looks like it, you might think I'm taking the piss, but this is actually where I was working. Like, it's like my aunt's garage, and it was the only, pretty much in Dublin, it was so difficult to find studio spaces. Because if you're using spray paint or like an airbrush or anything that sprays paint, you need a really well ventilated space, and it was incredibly difficult to find anywhere like that in Dublin. So I just started looking for garages, and pretty much my aunt had one, so I just moved in there, and that was my working conditions under that little light. Like, it's very depressing looking. But this was the first piece I painted, and it was on aluminium, and the aluminium is like 1 mil thick, so it was super thin, and that was the main reason I chose the aluminium, is because I wanted a very thin piece. I wanted these pieces because I was excited by the previous pieces using the computer. I wanted to try and make a piece that was like as thin, like almost without depth, like as thin as the screen. So it's only 1 mil aluminium. Then as a result, I had to use like enamel paints because acrylic doesn't really stick to it, and the oil paint is quite globular, and I wanted the images to be very flat. So I spent quite a while just like figuring out the best way of painting and how to paint like hard edges, and yeah, I was happy with it. But like, it's a graphic from just straight off Photoshop, like. And the thing that worried me is what I was doing when I was 18, 19, painting these realistic pieces. I'm just getting an image and I'm just copying it. Like, I think, like on a conceptual level, it's very, very similar. Like, I heard a quote recently that said, the thinking behind a lot of new art isn't that new. And I think this is a pretty good example. Like, aesthetically, it might look quite different, and it might look new and like kind of contemporary or like trendy, but like, it really, like, there's nothing new or interesting about it. Like, and then like once I kind of like, once I realized that, I was kind of pretty annoyed or frustrated, because I was just being seduced by the aesthetics of it. And then as a reaction, I just went kind of like batshit and just started painting, just like getting the pieces of aluminium and just destroying them with paint and just putting on as much stuff as possible, and like just wanting to use paint. So these two, they're the first, these aren't finished. These are like the first layers, and pretty much like very painterly. And then what I do from this point is, instead of just relying on the computer to make the image, I'd use these as the base. Then I might make an image up on Photoshop or Illustrator, and then I'd paint it on top of these, and then it would be a back and forth between the computer and just using your hand. And I think I've kind of arrived at the point where the intuition on the computer is much different from the intuition with a brush. And so the whole point of these paintings is to merge them. So this is the first layer, it was the very kind of painterly layer. And then in the end, I ended up with paintings like these. And so you can see some parts, you can imagine that whole image being green and then getting an eraser and just erasing through it. And you're left with those kind of green shards. And you see in some parts, there's kind of like a pink line going through it, and you see that was all kind of brushwork, is very painterly. And then, yeah, like anywhere there's a gradient, it's pretty safe to say is on the computer. And then even just here, there's that grey section, that was just a grayscaled image, and you can't really see it here, but it was like a scribble in grayscale, but like when you see it in person, it kind of looks like it was straight from Photoshop. So I kind of liked the contrast, and there's like kind of textures of this, and there's, yeah, I just think it was a turning point. And then this painting as well, and it was the same thing. It was really just combining a very painterly kind of approach, and then using the computer to aid it and create something where the two kind of worlds merge. And then that's a close-up of the previous piece, and you can kind of see in this, you can see in the middle section, like all that's very painterly. It was all painted up and sanded down, and like it's the kind of uncontrollable, like all that, like, sorry, what I'm talking about at the moment is this kind of section here, and that's just layers and layers of paint, and it's just built up and like sanded down and painted again, and just, it's like you don't really have control over it. Like, so much work goes into it, you end up with something you wouldn't be able to pre-plan it, like. And then on the complete opposite, like the sharp lines that kind of create a mask with it are just generated on the computer. And even that the black and white was I think the image posterized. I think that's the word, or threshold, is it? And then that was painted, but instead of painting it clean or trying to do it sharp, it was very loose and rough with an airbrush, and you get a kind of painterly quality. And I just much prefer these paintings. It feels like if like there's a conceptual approach to them as well as like an aesthetic. And then this painting, this is the one that's in the back of the room. And I think this is kind of a little step forward again, because those tubes, they were built on like a 3D modeling program. So again, it kind of combined like I suppose Photoshop, Illustrator, 3D modeling, and just kind of like painting. And then this slide, I think it shows it very well. So I started off with the painting on the left, and absolutely hated it, because it goes back to that whole thing of just copying a digital image. I don't think there's much to it. Like, it's not very interesting. Like, it's more or less the same as just copying like painting a portrait, copying the picture of a portrait. There's nothing to it. Like, it's such a, like, it's so, like, yeah, like, I was, like, it might look good, but I don't think, like, it might visually kind of look nice, but I don't think conceptually it makes for good art. And then being kind of a bit ballsy and stuff, and just smearing paint over the whole thing. And that kind of goes back to the Sagmeister thing as well. It's better to try, because like if I tried and failed, I just would have ended up in the bin. That would have been the end of it. But if I didn't try, I wouldn't have ended up with the final result. And then the last layer is just a computer layer through Photoshop and Rhino just on top of it. So you kind of see that's pretty much the process. And that's, like, you can see the painting in the back, but you end up with sections in it that, like, there's no way you ever would have ended up with if you were working solely through the computer, or if you were working solely with like a paintbrush. And then just, this was another piece, and I just put this in because kind of highlights again, like, I think how using the computer kind of change your thought process. So it was a piece, and it was pretty much just a file up on Photoshop, and I deleted the background, and then I was trying to think, like, would it be possible to paint a piece out of background, like a kind of PNG file or something? So it was a piece that's laser cut out, so it's essentially a piece without a background, but it's just that result again. Like, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for using the computer. And then I know I was moaning about studying architecture earlier on, but after a couple of years of it, it definitely does, like, leak into your brain a bit. Like, I kind of got an itch to do something three-dimensional or do something spatial. And I decided to build a chair, and it was out of, like, wood and aluminium. But that's the finished chair. And pretty much, I was kind of thinking, like, back in college, I remember to study, like, the STE movement, is that what it's called? The STE, yeah. And it's kind of interesting because I was in that whole kind of movement, like, it's kind of lay out a concept and aesthetic that covered, like, art and design. So I was kind of thinking, I wonder if I can make a chair that kind of relates to painting, or if I can kind of combine the two. So I named it Gradient Chair because it's a gradient. That was it, like. But yeah, but like, I think that was 100% happened because I studied architecture. I wouldn't have even thought of doing something like that if I'd done graphic design or fine art. And then, yeah, so I've improved working conditions since my aunt's garage. This is my studio at the moment, and it's nice because I can ventilate it easy and I can work in some bigger pieces. So I have a couple big pieces on the go at the moment, and I really wanted to have them finished to show you guys, but they didn't get finished because I have a very non-linear working process, and ended up painting over one of them last week. So this painting, I think it's 1.8 by 1.2 meters, and that's a painting painted with an airbrush and a paintbrush, and obviously it just looks like something straight off the computer, and it is. And of course, I have like a vendetta against anything that was done on the computer and just replicated. It kind of annoys me now, like, when I see it. So you just paint over it, like. So like the bottom, you see the kind of pale turquoise at the bottom, and the black strokes, that was filling up an argon with paint and just without having any intention or without having anything pre-planned, just go and attack the piece, and then you like work against that. So the very first layer was kind of a computer layer. The second layer was like spontaneous and intuitive with an air gun, and then the third layer is kind of white and the black. And again, even in this, the white layer, it's not a solid white. It was kind of done with spray paint, so it's half kind of transparent. You can see the lines of it, so it's kind of building up texture. And then these are some details from when I was working through it. Like I should have documented it better, but again, you can see up at the very top right, you can see some of the very first layer, and then some of the black, like a stroke of an airbrush, like a stroke of a brush, and just being super liberal and really not being afraid to actually just go and attack it. There's some more details. You can even see in this photo, there's some drips and stuff. And like the thing is, when I started working in the studio, I'd avoid drips at all costs. I wanted everything to be like super perfect and all, but like it's not real painting when you're that conscious about trying to make stuff perfect. It kind of, it just kind of feels false. So I kind of just went with the flow and let it drip and let it be a bit messy. That's the finished piece. Well, it might not be finished, I'm not sure. Like I only took this photo to put in this presentation, so I might get another coat of paint next week. But you see like one side of it's very kind of drippy, I suppose is the word. But yeah, it's quite, like up close, it's quite painterly. There's not actually that much hard edge painting apart from the stroke. And then this is the other big painting I started, and I think on a couple of slides back, there was a corner of my studio, and one of the pieces was I wonder if I can go back real quick. Yeah, so the painting, that last slide, was actually this painting here on the right-hand side with the purple to white fade. And like I tried something completely different on that, like, and absolutely hated it, so just painted over it, and I do that quite a lot. So in a lot of the paintings, even with the one down at the back of the room, if you look close, you can nearly see a layer of relief, what was previously there. It's like a lot of these paintings, by the time they're finished, there's about 2 or 3 paintings underneath them, and some parts of those paintings might be capped, or other parts, or maybe the entire paint just gets painted over like this one. So this is kind of like the opposite process. So for the last big piece, I started off with a computer layer, and for this one, it was a painterly layer, and like there's absolutely no reason to put red at the bottom. It was like 100% was just impulsive, and then it kind of just back and forth between the computer, and you kind of end up with stuff like this. And this is only a very small section, but you can see there's like a little bit of kind of like removed pixels in the red, and then you have the brush texture in the very bottom, you have the pink, which is quite hard edge, and then you have like some brush strokes, and there's the drifts, and it's this is what I was trying to get at, like, cause this is very, like you wouldn't, like, I just don't feel like you'd be painting stuff like this if you weren't trying to take advantage of both mediums. And this is the last photo I have of it before half it got painted black. I really wanted to have this one finished, but yeah. Didn't go according to plan. But yeah, you can see in the bottom there's a lot of kind of, it's very rough and loose. And when you see it in person, it looks quite sharp here, but like in person, it's not really that sharp. It's a lot more liberal. And then this kind of just brings me onto walls. So that's where I am in the studio. And I think in the studio I have an approach that I want to explore, and I feel like there's room to develop. But obviously I like painting walls, and I've spent a long time doing it. And even back when I was taking the year out, like, and I wanted to focus on painting, I just painted walls. Like, I didn't paint any studio work, which is kind of interesting because I didn't really think about it at the time. But so yeah, this was a piece down in Grand Canal, and I painted this at the same time I was kind of doing those studio pieces, and it was I don't really like it, to be honest, because it feels like just the first layer. If this was in the studio, there'd be like several more layers on top getting worked over and erased through and trying to arrive at something. But yeah, but like this is one of the problems painting walls, because there's so many variables involved, and that's like that's what I like to talk about. Like, so first of all, the size of it, like I think it's 15 meters long, and that the bottom stroke here is nearly like a 15, it's what, 12? It's like a very slight slope over 12 meters, which is an absolute nightmare to paint. Like, like trying to do curves, like the curve at the far end is probably a very subtle curve over 6 or 7 meters, and just trying to do that stuff is technically very difficult. And like it just presents a challenge, and then it takes a lot of time. You need to be very well prepared. The biggest problem with painting walls is you kind of have to do them in consecutive days. You can't really half leave a piece because somebody's going to paint over it, or just, you know, like it's not going to end up well. Then this was another piece, recent enough, like, but again, this was actually a piece I was working on in the studio, and I kind of copy and pasted it into the wall, and I'm happy enough with this piece. But the only problem is that with using spray paint, like once you learn how to use spray paint, you can paint very accurately with it, and it's very hard to be spontaneous or kind of get any kind of painterly effects. Like, it's like the work I've shown you in the studio, a lot of it's out of my control. If you're, like, say you pull a dry brush across, you're going to end up with a texture, and it's very difficult to do that on walls because the scale changes. And yeah, with the spray paint, it's just like, yeah, it's deceptively difficult. So even though I like this piece, it's too clean, it's too kind of sharp around the edges. So then this brings me all the way back to the very first piece I showed you. And so this piece is down in West Clare on the side of a house in the middle of absolutely nowhere. And I really wanted to try pretty much paint a studio piece. Like, I wanted to do something at the same level that I was working at in the studio, because I feel like all the walls I've done are crap. Like, and these are some of the sketches and compositions, and like in some of these, there's actually a photograph of the piece I was working on in the studio. So I was actually trying to use the work in the studio and use it to make a piece. But that's some of the sketches. There's a lot more, but it just kind of shows you how much kind of thought and work might go into something. And even from the SketchUp, it's already, even from the digital sketch, it's already changed. And that was, I barely even started the piece. And then, like I was saying, I wanted to try do something that was, I wanted to try do something that was kind of similar to the studio work. So I decided to use a lot of house paints and brushes and rollers. And you can see the kind of, like, it's super rough, the kind of gradients up in the top right. And that was with house paints, and I wanted to try just leave it rough and see what happened. Yeah, so then even in the evening time when I'd finish painting, I'd photograph and I'd work on top of those photos. So it'd be pretty much a 24/7 analysis. And then, yeah, like that was one evening, just 3 kind of variations or just thought processes. And the thing is, if you've never paint, like, the thing with painting walls is, like, when I'm doing this is on a computer screen, which isn't very big. And then when you go and paint it, it might need to be painted like 50 times bigger. And it completely changes, it's hard, like the scale, like scale is a factor that, like, I don't think a lot of people realize is a problem when you have to paint a wall, but it's, yeah. But this is it, and this is really working through and kind of going with the flow. And you can see in the bottom right underneath the window, that was done with an air compressor, and then I think a bit of it up on the left-hand side over the window. And there wasn't really like a plan. It was really just trying to work through it and figure it out, just like in the studio, because a lot of times I think like street artists, like I'm not a street artist, I can't stand the term, but like street artists and graffiti artists, they have a style. And like when you have a style, you're just kind of, you're obeying a set of formulas, which means you kind of like, you give yourself parameters, and then it means you don't have to make as many decisions. and it means you can paint a lot of work and you can be very prolific. But I've always been quite conscious of this, and I think that's why like all the early work was so varied, is because I wanted to really explore and find out what I was doing. So if I ever had a style, I'd know exactly, have reasons for having like whatever kind of like techniques or like graphic qualities possessed in that style. So I was just working through it, and I think this is probably at about like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then that was 2 o'clock, and you can see there's just changes happening the whole time. Like it's not like there's nothing is set in stone. Like a lot of times when people paint walls, they just have a solid image and they'll just work to it, like, and they just replicate it. And the kind of I just don't think it's a good way to work if you're working on large pieces. So that was it. And then, one of the other problems with painting walls is, apart from the size, you can also see them from quite far away. In some instances, like this one, is probably maybe 80 meters away. And the thing is, the stuff I was trying out in the left-hand side, and it just looked like absolute shit from the road. Like it looked like just a bunch of mistakes. And that was something I had to be conscious of, because I was working through this and I was thinking, like what looks good to me when I'm standing in front of it looks absolutely terrible. You can't read it when you're like coming down the road. And so that was the finished piece. And as a result of like being like observing it from far away and like the different distances, I pretty much reverted back to just putting in blocks of color, which really annoys me. Like I really wanted this piece to be like something special, but like it just feels like a defeat, to be honest. Like it's kind of you know. But anyway, there's always another one to paint, like. But you see, so having the blocks of color, because like I was trying to put in gradients and stuff, and like from far away it just looked like an absolute mess, like. And I just like this photo because that house went out of their way to paint, to try blend in with the landscape. Like the green is pretty like a mix of the grass and the sky. And then so when I woke up last Sunday, I'd say her eyes pretty much started bleeding. Like, and then that was it in the field, like, which is nice because like every other wall you paint is in a city, so it's kind of nice to have some scenery around. And that's pretty much it. So thank you for having me. Like.